So, good evening. Welcome to Dusty Feet. It's October 27th, 2022. That's almost the end of the month. And as for Savannah, Georgia, fall has fallen upon us. So as you can tell by the title, this is going to be an interesting launching point to our discussion tonight, right? Why aren't dinosaurs in the Bible? Yet I think maybe for some, it'll be a much more challenging question, actually, about the Bible itself. So don't forget, description below are links to all audio, video, and source documents that we use here in the Dusty Feet. We want to make sure that any material we use here is properly credited to those folks who work so hard to bring it to us. Without their efforts, learning we do here does not happen. So don't forget to click to subscribe, hit that bell icon if you want a reminder. Any questions, go to TheDustyFeet.com. And as always on the Dusty Feet, This is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God, interconnection of His creation, where belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. So here we go with some more AlephBeta on the Dusty Feet. Okay, so let's take a listen to Rabbi David Fohrman and the folks at AlephBeta with this video, Why Aren't Dinosaurs in the Bible? Then we start asking questions. Enjoy the video.
Hi, it's Rabbi David Fohrman, and welcome to Parshat Noach. You are watching AlephBeta. So, where did all the dinosaurs go? Well, I guess they probably didn't have room on the big boat for them during the flood. That's one of the sort of folk legends which is out around about the disappearance of the dinosaurs. Certainly the dinosaurs are the most visible, mysterious component of the vanished world. I know at least that when I take my kids to the Museum of Natural History, that's the draw, the dinosaur room. There's Raptosaurus Rex battling Megalosaurus, and they're huge, and they've got fangs, and your 7-year-old is wide-eyed, and that's why you even bother to go to the Museum of Natural History in the first place. What's the deal with these dinosaurs? And then the painful question, the question that the 7-year-old girl asks her father, stares up into his eyes, Daddy, how come these aren't in our book? I mean, the Torah is supposed to contain the great history of it all, so where are all the dinosaurs? That's what I want to talk with you about today. Okay, so I'd like to give you a general framework for thinking about this question, but not really just this question, but really puzzling things about Torah itself, and I'll elaborate some of that later. But let me jump in and give you the paradigm now. A while back, I read a fantastic book. It's called How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. He tries to give you a manual as to how to attack a book, how to go about understanding it. And one of the very first things he says is that you have to decide early on what kind of genre the book is. And if you misinterpret the genre of the book, then you're lost from the very beginning and you really have no chance at really understanding it. Imagine that you were reading a chemistry textbook and you did not understand that it was a chemistry textbook, so you thought you were in fact reading poetry. You would ask the wrong questions about it. Or if you were reading poetry and you thought you were supposed to be reading a chemistry textbook, you would also ask the wrong questions about it. So imagine you're actually reading poetry. You're reading Carl Sandburg's poem, The Fog Crept In on Little Cat Feet. And imagine you're teaching that poem, and somebody in the back of the room raises their hand and says, Teacher, I don't understand. How could the fog creep? It doesn't have feet. It's not a cat. This whole poem, it just doesn't make any sense. You would say, you just don't understand the genre. There's no answer to that question. It's the wrong question. It's a bad question. You could ask if you want the imagery of fog creeping, what's it meant to convey? But that's an entirely different question. That's a question that makes sense for poetry. The bottom line is you have to understand the genre. If you misinterpret the genre, you misinterpret everything. And so now the great question is, what kind of book is the Torah? How could we begin trying to read this book without having any idea what kind of genre it is? And the problem is, it's not so easy to figure out what kind of genre the Torah is. It's got 613 laws. Them's a lot of laws. So maybe it's a law book, a legal treatise. But it's really not such a good legal treatise because it sure has a lot of stories in it. What are all of those stories doing in a legal treatise? It's just out of character. It's got lots of philosophy in it. Could be a philosophy book. Yeah, it has too many laws and stories to be a philosophy book. So what kind of book is it? Here's what I think it is. I would say it is a guidebook. It's a book intended to guide individuals and a nation how to develop a relationship with those around them, a relationship with people around them, and a relationship with their God. How to do that at the collective level if you're the nation of Israel, and how to do that at the individual level if you are one of the people of Israel. What does this guidebook consist of? What does it take to guide someone in this? One of the things it takes is laws. There's certain laws that you have to follow, certain laws that you have to know. The laws are very, very important. But it doesn't just take laws. It takes more than laws. So if you say to yourself, all it takes to be a good person is to follow the 613 commandments, that's actually probably not entirely true. The Ramban talks about being a menuvel b'rshus HaTorah, somebody who keeps punctiliously all of the commands and still is a morally obtuse person. How is that possible? It's possible because law alone is too narrow a discipline to completely regulate human behavior, and the Torah itself accepts that. And that's why there's stories. The stories are there to teach you values, stories that tell you about what happened with our ancestors and the way God dealt with them and the way they dealt with God. And there are timeless lessons that apply to us today that are not about laws, but about larger truths that we're supposed to find a way to integrate into our lives. And there are certain philosophical notions that we need to understand. So the Torah talks about those ideas too. It takes all of that to guide us. So now back to Mortimer Adler. If the Torah is a guidebook, what does that then mean? It means that everything it tells you, its laws, its stories, and its philosophy, is all going to be told from the perspective of a guidebook. Everything is going to get slanted to be told from that perspective. And by the way, Chazal say as much. There's a famous statement that our sages make, Nevuah shehutzrucha ladoros nichtava. Any prophecy that was relevant for generations ended up getting written in the Torah. Prophecies that were just locally relevant for a particular generation didn't get written. Why? It gives us lots of insight into what life was like back then. Because it doesn't guide you, that's why. It's an interesting fact, but only that which guides you is written. Let me show you another puzzling aspect of how the Torah writes history. Chazal tell us, Ein mukdam u'me'ocher b'Torah. There's no such thing as chronological order in the Torah. Really? There's no such thing as chronological order in the Torah? Well, there is. But you can't trust the chronological order in the Torah, Chazal say, because every once in a while, the Torah will actually place something second that happened first. Now, why would the Torah do that? Why would the Torah deliberately mislead you about the chronological order of events? Because it's not a history book. It's a guidebook. And if the Torah can guide you by juxtaposing two different episodes with the same theme, so you should understand the theme that worked overarching periods of Jewish history, the Torah is going to do that and is going to sacrifice the history in order to guide you. And now let's come back to dinosaurs. So I think you may understand where I'm going here. The dinosaurs might have been around, but evidently the Torah didn't consider using Tyrannosaurus rex as a guide to human behavior, so it left it out, and Stegosaurus too. You want to learn about them? That's what the American Museum of Natural History is for, so you'll go there. But the Torah's not going to tell you about them because it doesn't fit into the guidebook. Were they important for what they contributed to the biological record? Very important. But they weren't important for you and how to guide your life from the Torah's perspective, so the Torah's not going to talk about it. It may well be that the Torah tells one story and science tells another story, and ultimately it's the same story. It's a story called reality, but one is intended to tell you the nuts and bolts of that reality, and the other is intended to guide you through it. When you and I read this guide, let us make no mistake about what we are reading. We are not just reading any old book. We are reading something that is meant to shape us, meant to help us tackle a grand quest as to what is the best way to live our lives in relationships with others. Everything the Torah tells us is designed to help us achieve those goals, but we need to understand the genre in order to be able to understand the messages.
Okay, so now we can bring up more questions about even more of Scripture, but possibly ask different questions. So I would recommend that book by Mortimer Adler. It's How to Read a Book, a Classic Guide to Intelligent Reading. Link is in the description. Right? It will actually help you to really try to determine the purpose of a book through determining its genre. Fair? So, Rabbi Fohrman, I think, does a wonderful job of bringing up this particular question. What's the genre of the Bible? And as for me, I'm very comfortable with the suggestion that he came up with, that it's a guidebook. So when one might ask, what do you mean by that? That's a fair question. So if it is a guidebook, what's its purpose, right? So the guidebook implies an audience. Who's going to use it? Like a guidebook to the Museum of Natural History. It won't be much of a use as a guidebook to, say, your local college campus. So, for the sake of our discussion tonight, we will say that the target audience of this guidebook is for those that are interested in the guidance of God, the one we call Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh. So, like the rabbi mentions, the dinosaurs are not part because they're not needed in the guidebook. The purpose of this book is not to reveal scientific truths. It's not designed to counter scientific truths. It's not designed as a historical book, as in one we would expect today, to create and defend historical timelines, right? Does it contain stories? Actual, real, nonfiction stories in a particular point in history? You betcha. Yet, if it tells the stories not in the order that they might have actually occurred, or the details don't match between two different accounts, does it mean there's an error? Okay, so if one expects the stories to be historically accurate, then you might have more than one challenge. But if you're looking again as the guidebook, then things take on a different perspective. Let's think of a guidebook as, say, at a museum or an exhibit, right? Even in a guidebook, as simple as that, right? There's going to be different sections. You'll have, of course, table of contents, right? And then possibly instructions, things that keep you safe, where the safety exits are, rules within the facility itself, no smoking, no running, keeping quiet to respect others, areas that are currently off limits, what you can and cannot do to the exhibits. You might have information about certain exhibits themselves, right? Their historical significance, or their relevance of a historical event. Yet the components of the exhibit might not be in the order of their creation by their artist, or maybe they're in the order of the influence it might have had in a particular era. Maybe it's in the order of color or size, or just the order the curator wanted to make it easier to help people flow. It might contain information about how some of them affected history or another artist. They might use poetry or stories attached to the exhibit itself. Information about how it affected many other people. And it might have some biographies about some of the exhibitors, maybe some of the curators of the exhibit, maybe a bit about why some have found interest in this particular exhibit. So that's just a small guidebook to a museum art exhibit, right? So how might we, like the rabbi said, look at the Bible? So is the Bible a story of the greatest history of it all, right? Does it give us the answers to scientific and historical facts of it all? And I think we really might have to answer no. Does that bother you? Are we expecting the Bible to be that source? Not that it's not a part of all of that, but we will have people that have lived in various times, in various places, that have very different scientific and historical views. And I'll say probably even their focus as well. They seem in the stories that we read I smile when I say this. They don't seem to care about all of that, right? The little girl in the museum with her father is asking, why aren't these in the Bible? They don't seem to be asking that question. And it seems, maybe from the stories we have, and we know this is only a fraction of the scrolls that could have existed in that day, right? That would be a part of these people's lives in their story. But in that, again, we still have, what about the dinosaurs? Where's Noah's Ark? What about the Ming Dynasty? What about the indigenous people that we know today in America? What about answers to questions of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? The purpose of certain animals or creatures. Don't forget that list can go on and on and on. Yet, if we tell people that all of the answers to life's questions are in the book, that all of our existence as humans is covered in the book, we might not only end up with speculation and disbelief, but maybe a response of, well, if you told me that, and it doesn't, then what else is wrong? And then they'll walk away. So maybe we need to really, really look at what the questions that we do ask of the Bible. What questions are relevant and fair to ask of these certain aspects of Scripture. So we have these aspects of this guidebook, the Bible, right? Laws, instructions, stories, philosophies. That's what the Rabbi brings up. And yes, they are a part, very much a part, each of them. And to support that thought, I have something that I've yet to do here on the Dusty Feet, is to have two different source videos. So here's a quick video from the folks at the Bible Project guys, Tim Mackey and John Collins. And in this video, there's a whole series on this that they have. We've covered some in the past on the Dusty Feet, although they were lost when the channel was lost, changed. So maybe we'll have to address a few of these things again. Heck, maybe we'll just do the whole series again. We'll see. So for now, enjoy this short video from the guys at the Bible Project on literary styles in the Bible.
The Bible is a collection of many books, telling one unified story from beginning to end. But all those books were written in different literary styles.
Yeah, think of it like walking into a bookstore where every aisle has a different kind of literature. There's history or poetry or nonfiction. And when you choose an aisle and pick up a book, you're going to have very different expectations, different things that you're looking for.
Right, they're all literature, but they communicate in really different ways.
Yes, and so the same thing is true for the Bible. If you don't pay attention to what style it's written in, you will miss out on the brilliance of each book.
So, what are the main types of literature in the Bible?
Well, first and foremost is narrative. It makes up a whopping 43% of the Bible. After that is poetry, which is 33% of the Bible. And then there's what you could call prose discourse, which makes up the remaining 24%.
Nearly half the Bible is narrative.
Yes, and this is no accident. Stories are the most universal form of human communication. Our brains are actually hardwired to take in information through story.
And stories are really enjoyable. Why is that?
Well, stories train us to make sense of the seemingly random events that happen in life by taking those events and then putting them in a sequence. And then together you can start to see the meaning and purpose of it all.
And what links this all together?
Well, good stories always have a character who wants something. And then through these characters, an author can explore life's big questions, like who are we, or what's really important in life. And a good story always involves some kind of conflict.
Some challenge to overcome, just like in our own lives.
And that forces us to think about our own challenges, why there's so much pain or disappointment in the world, and then what can we do about it? And stories usually end with some kind of resolution, giving us hope for our own stories.
Since these are Bible stories, are the characters showing me how I should live?
Yeah, that's not quite the point. Most Bible characters are deeply flawed. You should not be like them. But we are supposed to see ourselves in them, which helps us then see our lives and failures from a new perspective. And without even realizing it, these stories will start to mess with you and change how you see the world and other people and yourself.
Now, there are different types of narrative in the Bible.
Yeah, there's historical narrative, but also narrative parables, short biographical narratives like the four Gospels. We'll look at all these in later videos.
Okay, next up is poetry, which honestly, I don't read a lot of.
Yeah, you're like most people. But 1 out of every 3 chapters in the Bible is poetry.
Yeah, why so much poetry?
Well, poems mainly speak through dense, creative language, linking together images to help us envision the world differently. Poems use lots of metaphor to evoke your emotions and your imagination.
Lots of fancy language, but wouldn't it be easier just to tell me what I need to know?
Well, think about it. In life, we tend to form mental ruts, and we think in these familiar, well-worn paths that are very hard to get out of through logic or reasoning. And what good poetry does is force you off the familiar path into new territory.
Sneaky.
And there's different types of poetry in the Bible. There's lots of types of songs or psalms. There's the reflective poetry of the wisdom books, and then the passionate resistance poetry of the prophets.
Okay, the last big literary type is called prose discourse, and it makes up 1/4 of the Bible.
Yeah, these are speeches, letters, or essays. And the focus here is building a sequence of ideas or thoughts into one linear argument that requires a logical response. Like, hey, have you thought about this thing? You should also consider how it connects to this other thing. And if you do, then you will see that this is the result. And in light of that conclusion, therefore, you should probably stop doing that one thing so that this other thing will be the outcome.
So you're persuading me with reason.
Yeah, discourse forces you to think logically and consistently and then do something about it. Biblical discourse is found in law collections, in wisdom literature, and the letters written by the apostles.
Okay, so each book of the Bible has one literary style.
No, actually most books have a primary literary style, like narrative, for example. But then embedded in the narrative, you'll come across poems or parables or a collection of laws. Every biblical book is a unique combination of literary styles.
And to read that book well, I need to be familiar with each literary type and how it works.
Yeah, so you know what to pay attention to and what questions you should ask. But before we look at each type, there's one more unifying feature of biblical literature that's really important and really cool. And that's what we'll explore next. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this Bible Project video. It's one part of a much larger series on how to read the Bible. You can find more of those videos and all of our videos for free at thebibleproject.com. We're a nonprofit, crowd-funded animation studio, which means you can actually join us and help us make more videos. Again, go to thebibleproject.com. And one more thing. This video is lovingly dedicated to my former teacher, Ray Lubeck. He first introduced me to all the ideas that we explored in this video. If you want to learn more about these ideas, check out his book called Read the Bible for a Change by Professor Ray Lubeck. Love you, Ray. Thanks so much.
So I love what those guys bring. So the guys covered, right? Narrative, poetry, and prose discourse. Please be sure to check all the other vids out. The links are in the description, okay? Please. So now we have some more nuanced terms. We can use them to help us understand this guidebook of ours, to help us determine maybe some questions that can or should be asked and when they would apply, right? So I still will stick with the idea that the rabbi had that this is a guidebook. Yet maybe, for the fun of this discussion, I'll amend that title a bit. So, it's a guidebook that leads us to the Messiah. Yet it's still a book that's intended to guide individuals and a nation on how to develop a relationship with those surrounding them, a relationship with people closer to them, and a relationship with their God, right? And how to do that at the collective level if you're the nation of Israel, and how to do that at the individual level if you're one of the people of Israel. Okay? So, if it is a guidebook that leads us to Messiah, I love the point that even Yeshua seems to loop the story around, because he knows that all of the directions that the laws, the stories, and the philosophies all point us to, the Messiah, but yet he takes time to direct us to the beginning, to the Father, and to all he's done throughout all those preceding stories, reflected in those laws, right, those instructions, and been postulated in those philosophies. Yeshua's last visit is not the end of the story. The story, as we've been addressing the last couple of weeks, right, is that it's very much still being lived out. Okay, so to again address the description of the book, I might make another amendment. It is a guidebook that leads us to Messiah, yet is still a book intended to guide individuals and a nation on how to develop a relationship with those surrounding them, a relationship with people closer to them, and a relationship with their God, and how to do that at the collective level if you're the nation of Israel, followers of Messiah, body of Messiah, and how to do that at the individual level if you are one of the people of Israel and those that are followers of Messiah, the individual parts of that body. The purpose of the guidebook hasn't really changed at all. It's still guiding people in the relationships with each other and with their God. Still guiding us with that same wisdom and insight. And as the Messiah lived his life in example, it's not really a burden at all. But it will come with a price. Sorry to disappoint. It's not free. But it's been like that from the beginning. The story has not changed. We are still expected to look and act in such a way as to reflect and bring credit to our God and our community. God gave us a foundation for that view, for that perspective to be looked at. It's the Torah. Will it look a bit different throughout the millenniums? Yeah, very much so. But is the foundation different? I'll take a few words from the person to whom the guidebook is about. See what he said about the book. This is Matthew 5:17 through 20, I think. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign of the heavens. Oh, and if we were still inclined to say that in those stories that Israel failed, of which you know I have a very different perspective and do not agree, yet if we are still in the story, that we are in the time between the last prophet, John, and what he describes in his last scroll, then we need to take a look at our own period of time. Us, the followers of Messiah. And then we need to look in the mirror and see what our past, what our heritage has done in this timeline, and what we brought. That alone scares me. And its consequences. Okay? Okay, so let's keep looking at the guidebook to continue to plumb its mysteries in each of its parts, to challenge ourselves. Maybe first, to ask the genre of the part I'm reading, and then, in that light, begin to ask questions that belong to that genre. How does this guide me as individuals and my community, my nation, on how to develop a relationship with those surrounding us, a relationship with people closer to us, and of course, a relationship with our God? And how to do that at the collective level, if we are the nation of Israel, followers of the body of Messiah, and how do we do that at the individual level, if we are one of the people of Israel and or those that are the followers of Messiah. It's our guidebook, the whole book. To not use the whole guidebook, that's at our own peril, lest we forget the Messiah. And that's the one the guidebook points us to. He is not finished, so it can't be the end. Hence, we're still very much in the story. So let's live our part and always keep asking questions. Let's just make sure to use the guidebook to see if we can answer them. Yeah? It's not a guidebook to the nuts and bolts of the universe, but it is one that will help us live in this world, right? Think about that. So, on Tuesday, November 1st, we'll be starting our new format for our OTC, Outside the Class. These videos will be posted, as in not live, on Tuesdays. And the goal, if we can, is to do it every Tuesday. So the next Matthew series episode 17, The Hammer That Heals, we'll be discussing a bit about expectations. And if you think about it, there's a direct tie to what we've been discussing right here. So it should be an interesting outside the class episode, right? Should be. Point to ponder. Oh, wait. Before we get there, I need to let everyone know that we will not be live next week. I get to be will be part of a celebration of life service next Thursday. So we can't do live. So I will see you the week after, on the 10th of November. Okay? Now, point to ponder. I like this one from Mackie. It's a deeper thought. If you see yourself, your sense of who you are, your worth, your purpose, through the filter of your family of origin, life's events, or your temperament, you'll have a very difficult time actually understanding who you are, and you'll spend most of your life letting other people determine who you are. If you see yourself, your sense of who you are, your worth, your purpose, through the filter of your family of origin, life's events, or your temperament, you'll have a very difficult time actually understanding who you are, and you'll spend most of your life letting other people determine who you are. And you wonder how much time Yeshua spent, and I think we see it in the stories, of walking the disciples through that. And maybe his interaction with Paul too. Thanks, Tim Mack, for bringing that up. And thanks for being with us tonight on The Dusty Feet.